Okay, it's 5 by my watch. As promised, we will start. Let's say a word of prayer. Father, we thank you so much for this evening. We commit today's webinar into your hands. That God, you will still add to knowledge so that we impact the nation, the people we see, and even the people we teach. We commit our facilitator, that God, you give him all the blessings he needs to teach us more. In Jesus' name, amen. So today we are going to have an interesting topic to discuss. And the topic is dietary requirements for pregnant women. Me and you know that in Ghana, any issue about pregnant women and children is a matter of concern to everybody. Even in the hospital, any issue about pregnant women, nobody jokes with it, the government and the whole citizenry. So we don't mess up with them. So this evening, we want to learn more about the dietary requirements for our pregnant women, what we need to do, know and do right. And we are blessed to have a facilitator who has so much knowledge. And for the past few days, those of us in Kumasi, we have listened to him on one of the radio stations, Love FM, let me be specific, discussing into details about sugar and sugar sweetened beverages, the health effects of them. And even this morning, we also enjoyed his interview on processed foods, spices, and salt, impact on our health. And we are blessed that he has still made time to be with us this evening to share knowledge with us. Listening to him, everything he's discussing is about facts and data and scientific evidence. So this evening, we are blessed to have Dr. Charles Apri, who is a senior lecturer in the Department of Biochemistry and Biotechnology, KNUST. He is also a researcher, no wonder to that for me, and also a consultant in nutrition. Doctor, we want to hear from you. So you have the floor, speak to us, and after that, we'll ask all our questions. Let's give a virtual round of applause to Dr. Charles.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And moderator, thanks so much for the kind words. First time I'm hearing virtual applause. Thank you so much for the kind words. So, members of Nutrition Dietetics Association Society in Kumasi, I want to start by thanking you so much for this opportunity you've given me to present to you on the very important topic dear to my heart. It's dear to my heart because we've done a lot of research in this area, and I have quite something to share, if not a lot, something small to share in the area. So I want to thank the organizers and the executives for this honor done me. And I hope that I'm able to carry you all along and I'm able to meet your expectation with respect to the topic I have been given. I was asked to present to you on the topic dietary requirements for pregnant women. And like I indicated to you, pregnant women is very important. I think the moderator himself has mentioned that one of the things we want to take note of is that in terms of nutrient and dietary requirements, pregnant woman is almost always at the top there. However, one of the observations we've made in recent times is that there's not been, we've started well in terms of our achievements and all that, but sometimes I feel that we get, I don't know which is which, whether we get, complacent with our successes. And so we sometimes drop our guns and then we start dropping. And while I go through, you understand why I'm making some of these statements. And so to start, and without wasting much time, I'm going to start by first giving you an outline of the presentation I'm giving So a brief intro, and then we'll do a little bit of the physiological changes that occurs during pregnancy. And then I'll take you through why there is the need to focus on nutrition in pregnant women. A little bit about what's balanced diet. Of course, we all know what balanced diet is, but remind ourselves what it is, especially with regards pregnant women. And then some few tips for planning your meal for pregnant women. And then lifestyle factors that can affect optimal nutrition. Here, I also take a little time off and talk to you about some of the findings we found. One of my biggest surprise I've come across in recent times in our research, especially among pregnant women and adolescents as well, is that topic, what we call food taboo, is still ingrained in a lot of our societies. And so you'll be very surprised that you go into some communities and food taboos are still there, and people would want to, in a way, stick to it. Some of the works we've done has shown to us that there are a lot of gatekeepers in the society, in the community, who are ensuring that these food taboos, the eggs, don't give the egg because the child will become a thief. Don't give him a ripe plantain where he become a drool. All these are being transferred from one generation to another. And so I will take time off to talk to you briefly about some of these things, and then some of the help that we need to give to pregnant women as nutritionists, as dietitians, and then we will conclude on that with some few references. So you have the permission, I'll just start quick and straight away. So the first thing I want to talk about is that healthy diet intake is very important for everyone. And I'm sure as nutritionists, as dietitians, I need not belabor this point. We all know that it's very important to ensure healthy diet. I think we've said it time and time again that we are what we eat. And I've always maintained that if you use or if you refuse to use nutrition and dietetics to ensure preventive health, the only choice out there eventually is to have to go for curative health. And so in spite of the fact that healthy diet is very important for us, it's more important for pregnant women, as you know. And pregnancy, because during pregnancy, there's a lot of changes in a woman's body, as well as the physiology of it. I will discuss some of the few physiology. And once these changes occur, it means that the nutritional needs also changes as well. And so the nutritional need of pregnant women, when you compare the statistics and the data, you realize that are almost always higher than the non-pregnant women. That is not to say that, I've also heard people who would also say that because they are pregnant, they will have to eat double because the baby in the stomach also needs the same amount. That's wrong, actually. Though comparatively, it's a bit higher than what the non-pregnant woman would take. And the reason is that because the body undergoes certain changes to accommodate and then nourish the fetus. Let's take note that during pregnancy, there's a huge impact on health and the development of the baby as well. And let's not forget that if you don't ensure proper nutrition of these mothers, by extension, proper nutrition of their children or of their infants or babies, then what it means is that we are going to have babies or children who are obese and all other factors. Of course, if you know the Dutch disease syndrome, effectively, these children are also going to grow, and then we are looking at cardiovascular conditions and all that. So it all starts from pregnancy. And if you take a critical look at life cycle, the decisions and everything that starts or that has got to do with the life cycle starts with pregnancy. So let's take note of that. And we have to take note that getting these right nutrients is key to having a healthy pregnancy. Of course, when it's a healthy pregnancy, we are also looking at the birth outcomes. And I'll speak to you briefly some of these birth outcomes we've observed. A healthy balanced diet also provides the mother and the baby with all the nutrients they need. And malnutrition during pregnancy is a huge health risk. Apart from the fact that it's a health risk for the mother, it's also a very adverse risk, or it brings about a lot of adverse factors against the child or the baby that has to be born. And so it's very imperative on us as nutrition officers, as dietitians, to ensure adequate nutrition for a woman during and before pregnancy. And that is one of the responsibilities that has been left in our hands as nutrition and then as dietitians. I must put it across here that the reason why we need to even focus more on them, as I've already indicated to you, and when I say them here, I'm referring to pregnant women, is the fact that there are a lot of physiological changes that occur during pregnancy, a lot of them. Sometimes when you understand the physiological changes that occur during pregnancy, then the issue of adolescent pregnancy becomes rather a bigger headache. Because even the adults have some of the physiological changes. And sometimes the nutrient intake is not good enough to nourish the fetus and then develop the fetus. So we ask ourselves, what about the adolescent who is still growing or who is still in the state of growing and has not achieved his optimal growth? What if this adolescent also finds herself with pregnancy? Let's also not lose sight of the fact that this nutrient during pregnancy, most of our metabolism is also adjusted, or there's a bit of changes in our metabolism. And all this is to ensure that nutrients are available for the fetus. And of course, the regular nutrients we know, the macro and the micronutrients, are all essential. But in this my presentation, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the micronutrients, because sometimes I always put it across that yes, there are few pockets of hunger in the country. And so people are virtually not getting much to eat. When you look at their food security, they are not secure. They don't know where their next food is coming from. All these are challenges, I admit. But I also feel that the larger masses have the food to eat. But basically, we are eating the macronutrients and we have neglected the micronutrients. So I'm going to eventually focus my presentation a little bit more on the micronutrients, which are very relevant during pregnancy, and then we look at some of the observations we've made in time past. So these are the physiological changes that occur in pregnancy. I want to believe you know this already, but in terms of gastrointestinal changes, the bowel motility slows down, and once the bowel motility slows down, what it means is that chances of constipation are higher. In terms of the renal plasma flow is high, and so glomerular filtration rate is also higher. And this is also one of the things that brings about a lot about UTI infection. One of my PhD students is currently trying to look at UTI infection among pregnant women around the Asiedu district. And I think the prevalence we are seeing for the UTI, if I'm right, should be around 21%. So what it means is that UTI infection is also very high. Serum creatine, urea nitrogen in the blood all reduces, and it's very important. In terms of endocrine, cortisol is high, prolactin is high, and all that female hormones, estrogen, progesterone are high. Cardiac rate goes high, cardiac output is high, stroke volume is also high. The musculoskeletal, you realize that the lumbar lordosis and then the joint laxity all increases. So at the end of the day, you realize that there are a lot of changes that is occurring during this phase of our life. And once these changes occur, it means that we need to also adjust our nutrient intake to be able to meet some of these changes. Now, increased nutritional needs can be met through balanced diet, which we know. And the AMDR of macronutrients remain the same. So let me put it across. Just that the calorie needs increase in the second and then the third trimester. And I'm sure we all know as dietitian, as nutrition officers, we know very well that the pregnancy can be sectioned into 3 phases, the first, the second, and the third trimester, and caloric needs gradually increase. So some of the few important carbohydrates, you know about that. I need not belabor the points. Protein, you know, and then fats are all very essential. But like I keep emphasizing, whenever we do some of these dietary recalls and we analyze the data, what is coming clear to us is that maybe the carbohydrates, the fats are not difficult. Of course, it's also because of our dietary patterns and how we are eating. The difficulty sometimes is with respect to the protein. However, my emphasis is on the micronutrients, and the first one is folate. I think we should all have a fair idea of what folate does. Very significant in what we call the 1-carbon metabolism, if I want to go into the biochemistry. But folate is so essential. In simple terms, helps us to form the blood cells and then the DNA or the tissues. And I must say, and those of you have taught before, sometimes I say this jokingly and then you laugh. One of my biggest observations and what sometimes get me surprised is that when we're doing research with pregnant women, it sounds to us that most of our pregnant women, first time of visiting the hospital is about 6 to 8, averagely 6 to 8 weeks. And then when you ask them why they've waited and why are they visiting the first time of visiting the hospital for the 6th to the 8th week, invariably the answers we get is that I just got to know I am pregnant. And I'm talking from a lot of experience. I just got to know I'm pregnant. Some of them have even met some who probably got to know they are pregnant in their 10th week. 10th week, we are looking at 2 months plus 2 weeks. And what is so disheartening is that once you get to know this late, it means that you've missed out of the critical period window. There's something we call the critical period in the fetus development. And this is the stage where a lot of these essential spinal cord, what we call the nervous systems are formed. And I have a diagram I'll show you very soon, where a lot of these nervous systems are formed. And if for some reason you miss out on folate at this period, then effectively folates may not even be too essential after the 6th, 7th, 8th week of pregnancy. And so usually I say jokingly that in our part of the world where pregnancy is airborne, of course, it's not airborne, you know what I'm referring to. But when I say the whole class will laugh and laugh and laugh, and the later they will ask me, say, why is pregnancy airborne? Then I tell them where people get pregnant without knowing what has caused the pregnancy, especially they know they are doing exactly what will bring out pregnancy, but they pretend they don't know about it, then eventually becomes airborne because you can't control it. We don't control our pregnancy. A lot of pregnancies, in fact, the last data I checked, about 50 to 60% of our women don't plan. Maybe it's even more, don't plan pregnancy. Now, the challenge with it is that if you don't plan it, what it means is that then you need to be on the folate. Once you know you are breathing the air, that is likely to cause the pregnancy. Then you need to start taking the folate. Of course, iron is also very essential. Calcium, very, very relevant. Potassium as well. And then choline. I don't know how much we are familiar with choline, but it's becoming evidently clear to us that when it comes to the development of the brain of the fetus, choline has been implicated as one of the most important nutrients. And one of the very good sources of choline is egg. And so sometimes when you hear the news out there, or when you do research and you come across the results, that there is this perception out there and still festering, especially in the Ashanti region. And this district I'm referring to, I don't want to mention, but there are some districts in the Ashanti region where people still think that when pregnant women take egg, the child is going to be thief. Then we are still not probably getting the message across well. So let's take note of that. Of course, like I've said, folic acid is a B9 if you want to use the numbering system, and it helps prevent neural tube defects like spina bifida and all that. And I must say, one of the challenges I've also had sometimes is our recommendation of pregnant women and even mothers taking a lot of solanum and contumely, the consusas, you know, or the turkey berries, if I should use that word, and the contumely because emamoja and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. My only challenge with that recommendation sometimes is that the folate in there, what is in there is folate, not folic acid. That's the reduced form of the vitamin. The folate in there is not oxidized. Of course, the active form is the oxidized form. It has to go through some level of processing. That is not even the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is bioavailability. Most of these micro minerals or micro vitamins in these green leafy vegetables are not bioavailable. And so I've always maintained that that should not be our first point of recommendation. Our first point of recommendation is that let's encourage these mothers to take the folic acid supplements. Very important. And then, of course, once you take the folic acid supplements and you're looking at folates from other dietary sources, then there is nothing wrong with that. So let's take note of that. And then the vitamin D, it helps to absorb calcium. I think you know that. And it's proven that once vitamin D is there, calcium absorption and actually phosphorus absorption is increased by almost 50% fold. So it means that there could be calcium, but then there's not enough of the absorption. I must also put across here, not in pregnant women though, but let me do a little bit of detour. We have always believed that in our part of the world, vitamin D is like abundant because of the sun, because the cholesterol, of course, is the precursor. And once you get your UV light from the sun, everybody should have adequate levels of vitamin D. However, I must put it across here that recent data and recent research we've done is suggesting to us that vitamin D deficiency is on the high, especially in our adults. So let's also be on the lookout for these things. And one of the reasons I've come across this or I've seen in our research is the fact that most of these adults are more or less enclosed, of course, because of the fact that they are becoming weaker and all that, they are not moving. They don't actually get the UV radiation. They're not going out virtually. They are almost restricted to indoor activities and stuff. And so there's a work we've done among adults 60 years above, or geriatric, if I should use the right term. And we realize that vitamin D deficiency is also on the high. So let's not always believe that vitamin D is okay for us. Of course, vitamin C, I need not also emphasize, but you know how much is needed. So like I spoke to you already, folic acid supplementation, it's very important. And here that brings me to what we call the Girl Iron Folate Supplementation Project. I think we achieved some successes already, but we are rolling back gradually, like I indicated to you. Because of course, a lot of misinformation also festered on in the various communities. We found ourselves in Asokore-Mampong one of these days, and there was a whole lot of brouhaha about it. The fact that nutritionists and health workers are using this folic acid or folic, folic and then iron supplements to in a way check their fertility rates. And it was quite mind-boggling to hear that. But I must tell you that there's messages out there. So let's go out there to also do the education so that we're able to change some of this misinformation. And so, of course, we know that the folic acid is 400 micrograms per day. And at least the recommendation is that we take it at least 3 months before conception. I think I've emphasized on that a lot. We don't wait till we see pregnancy before we are now starting rushing for folic acid. And so tell them that once you are breathing the air, that has the potential of making you pregnant. And especially you are not putting in any protection in quotes, then there is a need to take the folic acid. Of course, I've already indicated to you that the dietary source do not contain sufficiently high, hence the need for the supplement. And the bioavailability also from the folate is lower. I think I've explained all this. So these are some values I wanted to introduce or show to you, sorry. So vitamin A, if you compare the non-pregnant and the pregnant, you realize that the AI, the adequate intake for the pregnant woman, is slightly higher than that of the non-pregnant. And that runs through the rest of the vitamin. In terms of the vitamin D as well, almost same. Folate, you realize that during pregnancy, the level goes up a little bit higher. Calcium, similar. Iron, also the same. And that's how come I'm not surprised that we still have a lot of iron deficiency, anemia among our pregnant women. We are still not doing well with anemia. I must put it across. We are still not doing well with anemia. And I think the challenges are quite numerous. Challenges are quite numerous, but as nutrition, as dietitians or nutritionists and dietitians, as health educators, we need to do a little bit more on that. So let's take note of that. And then, so what I decided to show you here, the diagram or the figures you can see, is a critical development stage of some of the very important organs, or if I should put it that way. So on the embryonic stage, if you take a look at it, you realize that the central nervous system, critical stage of forming, is between week 2 up to week 6, thereabouts, or even week 5. If you look at the heart, almost all the critical stages for this central nervous system, the heart, the ears, the eyes, are all within the first 8 weeks. And so if you want all these organs to be well developed within the first 8 weeks, then what it means that is the stage that we are going to focus on the how do you call it, on the folic acid well. And so please, let's be very much minded about this recommendation. It's very important, and it has proven. I mean, once you see the folic recommendation or the supplementation is going down, you start getting this pocket of, how do you call it, this pocket of what we call the neural tube defect. And then sometimes I always tell people, we wait till the defects come, and then they're on radio soliciting for funds and looking for money to go and do surgery. Of course, some of the children don't even survive to tell their story. So let's be minded about this a little. And then once we are done with that, the next was to talk about the balanced diet for pregnant women. So I've said the nutrition needs increase during pregnancy, and individual needs also depend on factors such as the pre-pregnancy nutrient stores. So let's also take note about the fact that pre-pregnancy nutrient stores is very important. So at the end of the day, what makes it ideal or adequate for a pregnant woman also depends on the stores before the pregnancy, the stage of the pregnancy, the body size, the body composition, and even the physical activity level. It's very important we take note of this. And the general requirements are usually same in the first trimester, with the exception of the folic acid I've discussed with you. And then as you move through the second and the third, the requirement increases. So let's take note of that. Of course, balanced diets we know has to contain all the variety of foods, but including the fruits and vegetables, we know about all this, so I need not to stress so much. And then the proportion of the diet for pregnant women varies depending on the individual needs of the pregnancy. I've discussed that already. And so you'd also realize I've tried, because there are dietitians here, I've also tried to give you some statistics. So for the vegetable and fruits, at least 5 to 9 servings per day. And I'm sure you know what a serving is. The whole grain, 6 to 8 servings per day, as much as. Of course, water is also a very essential part of pregnancy nutrition. Sometimes I always say that as educators, and I'm also part to be blamed. Sometimes we spend so much time on talking about the macro and the micronutrients, and we leave water behind. So let's also not forget about water recommendations as well. Very important. Of course, in terms of tips, we know this already. Eating a variety of food, very important. Apart from that, choosing whole grains. These are general recommendations. I even don't think they are only recommendations for pregnant women. They are general recommendations for all of us and in all our endeavors. Eat plenty fruit and vegetable, include lean meat, choose healthy diet. All these are things we should know. We limit our unhealthy fats, I must say, and then drink plenty of fluid, like I've said. And of course, when I say fluid, I go for water and not any other thing. Of course, caffeine and alcohol. The thing about caffeine and alcohol is that it's been proven through research that they can traverse or they can cross the fetus membrane, or more or less they can be crossed from the pregnant woman to the fetus or to the born child. And so it's very important that we avoid. And I know from our research, we know that pregnant women, a lot of them are still taking quarter. So let's encourage them to minimize their alcohol, or even not to go for any alcohol. I don't think it's minimized, just to totally avoid them during pregnancy, totally avoid them. And then, of course, let's also not forget about food safety. Sometimes I also think that you talk about all the nutrients and you forget about the safety. And so you would want to focus so much on eating healthier, but then we forget that some of the foods we are eating are also contaminated. So anytime we are giving any education on in terms of what they should eat, let's also not forget about safety. Because you see, one of the problems is that once a pregnant woman goes through that episode of diarrhea or gets any foodborne infection, it becomes also difficult to manage. And so let's take note of that as well in terms of that. And then the next one, so these are keys to get safe and healthy eating. My pregnancy plates, I'm sure we all know this already. But of course, let's look at the proportions of each of them. Very, very important to take note of that. I'll share the notes later on. And then, of course, the vegetables, the fruits, the dairy, the grains, and the proteins are all things I've mentioned already. Now, let's talk about nutrition concerns during pregnancy. So some pregnant women do not get enough of the nutrients. And like I indicated to you, sometimes even my experience is that sometimes we are struggling to even give the right recommendation because the food is not there. I've come across people, you are telling them, eat a lot of this. It's a doctor, and I eat a lot of that and that. I hope you could all hear what I said. But the point is that some people are genuinely hungry. There's no food for them. And so once they are genuinely hungry, then it becomes very difficult to even imagine giving them the requirements and the specifics. But we need to find a way to go around that. And then it's better to also gain the right amount of weight during pregnancy. We know this already. Too much weight gain increase the risk of what we call the preeclampsia, pregnancy-induced hypertension, and other conditions. Very, very important. Sometimes this weight gain is not well checked, then we are leading to gestational diabetes and all that. So these are all very important. We know all these, the nausea and the vomiting, we know about that. And of course, research has proven that 4 out of 5 pregnancies occurs. And I've had a very funny experience with this. So once the nausea and the vomiting comes, then there's a picker behavior. And we did a research around is this in Michael Hospital, Pramso. We're trying to look at some of the picker behaviors of some of these mothers. And to my surprise, I don't know if I should say it. One woman says the only thing that saves her in this early morning is to rush to go and sit at the public, close to the public toilets, and just inhale what is coming out. And that's the only thing she can do to survive. Well, I'm not too sure how safe that is. Of course, that's not something I want to hear. But that wouldn't be my biggest headache. One of my biggest headache is a overconsumption of the sugar-sweetened beverage at this stage. And so people are, I don't want to mention brand names, but people are consuming a lot of this yellow. You know, there's one yellow, which is in a PET bottle. People are consuming a lot. There's one woman I met who has to drink like virtually 2 or 3 of that in the morning in order to overcome the nausea and the morning sickness. And then the husband's biggest problem is not about the sugars, but the husband's biggest problem is that that's making the pregnancy too costly. And so she's pleading that we should talk to her to minimize the intake of that so that she doesn't have to spend a lot in feeding her early mornings to overcome this. So that's one of the things I want you to take note of. Of course, allergies and intolerance are there. Constipation, I've discussed that. And then iron deficiency anemia. My biggest concern among this, apart from the nausea and the vomiting, is also the iron deficiency anemia. It is still there. It is still there. If you look at the regular or the adult pregnant, the pregnant adolescent, the prevalence of iron deficiency anemia is still high, and we need to do a little bit more. Of course, some of the dietary approach, we know about them. So a lot of green leafy vegetables, I've discussed that, fish and all that, but I've told you the bioavailability and even the iron. Let's forget that we have the hem and the non-hem iron. The non-hem are usually the plant sources. The hem is usually the animal sources. Sometimes our mothers and pregnant women are quick to tell us they don't have money for the hem because it's animal. Of course, we know animal proteins are very expensive. But one of the things that boggles my mind is that even though they don't have money for the hem iron, they are already sewing the nice white dresses that they will use to go to church when by God's grace they deliver successfully. And I think it all boils down to behavioral change communication. If you are always going to focus on the money, I can bet you it will be difficult to do some of these things. So let's push them. This is what I try to project from one of our publications to project to you about the challenge we still have with our iron deficiency anemia among pregnant women. And this data came from Ashanti region, specifically Ahafano South, and then Asante came north. This is the data we got, one of the papers we published. And we are trying to look at the 5-year trend of anemia at the time of registration, and then anemia, I think, 5-year trend of prevalence of adults. And let me put it this way, adults and then teenage pregnancy anemia trend for 5 years. And if you look at that, you observe that 2011 was quite high there, and then we came down a little. But if you compare that of the adult to the adolescent, the teenage, actually, you realize that the prevalence is actually increasing from 2011 to 2015. Same way, if you come and look at the 5-year trends of anemia prevalence for teenage and adult group, you also observe something similar. So I'm just trying to project this on my objective for projecting this is to let you appreciate that it's not too far from us. The HB level, sorry, the first one is the HB level, second is the anemia prevalence, virtually the same. It's not too far from us, and let's take note of that. Then, of course, lifestyle factors affecting the optimal nutrition of pregnant women. So diets, we've already emphasized on that. Exercise is very important. There are sometimes I think it's advisable that we also liaise with the doctors and then talk to them about what is available and what is acceptable. Some of the pregnant women, there's a lot of misinformation going out there that they don't dare do some form of exercise because that can lead to what we call a non-spontaneous abortion. Yes, it's true. I feel of that. But at the end of the day, I think if you're able to properly have a discussion around the medical team, the doctors and the dietitians, and even some exercise physiologists around, we should be able to get them a proper program to put themselves in. Of course, stress is, everybody is stressed, I must put it that way, but it has a negative impact on pregnant women. I've discussed smoking and alcohol abuse and some medications as well. There's still a lot of self-medication out there. So sometimes when we are talking to them, we are giving them the counseling. Let's also avert our mind to this and ask them if there are any. Some of them, they have their own recommended medications they are taking without any proper or any appropriate recommendations. So let's also avert our mind to that. And of course, adequate sleep is also important. And I've indicated to you, nutrition education can help a lot. And so I'm sure some of our nutrition officers in the district are doing this already. If you are not doing that, let's find a way of setting up nutrition education and then counseling as well. I feel that some of these pregnant women, and per my little experience on the field, all they need is somebody to talk to. And so sometimes let's avail ourselves to talk to them. And then the prenatal care, also very important. So in conclusion, if I've used my time well, healthy eating is necessary for healthy pregnancy and then healthy baby. And generally, nutrient needs can be met through a balanced diet of macro and then the essential nutrients. And the nutrient and energy need has to be tailored for the need of every individual patient. Thank you very much. And then I'll be on for any question. Thank you so much. And thanks for the attention. So I am done.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Charles Apri. That was very insightful. We've learned some new terms. Pregnancy has now become airborne. I think for some of us who are even married, it becomes airborne for us. We don't even know when it comes. So we should all prepare, take our folic acid. The women, take your folic acid whilst we wait to get pregnant. Thank you. So, doctor, we'll be asking some questions. The questions in the chat. Afterwards, those who want to ask questions by raising your hands, you can also do that. Then you'll be allowed to do so. There's a first question here from Joanna.
Yeah.
It says, thank you for the insightful presentation, Dr. Apri. And a question is, how does pregnancy impact a woman's hydration needs, bearing in mind dilutional anemia? And what are some of the practical tips for ensuring proper hydration during pregnancy?
Yes, so my thinking is that, of course, I'm aware of dilutional anemia, but I don't think it's a very big issue. If you ask me, I don't think it's a very big issue. And so sometimes we are thinking that probably because of the dilutional anemia, so we minimize our water intake. My biggest problem, if I should go on that angle, my biggest problem in terms of hydration among pregnant women is not about the how do you call it? It's not. It's for me. My biggest problem is more of the morning sickness challenges, because there are women who has to be hydrated, but because of the morning sickness challenges, they are not ready to take anything water, because water will not taste nice to you at that stage, and so they tend to resort to a lot of the what we call the sugar sweetened beverage. Of course, I don't want to mention any name, but there are a lot of, there's one particular one, I still don't want to mention the name, I'm tempted not to mention. But there's this one particular one that they are virtually, and I told you my experience. The husband says, Doctor, I'm gonna make another dose and say on to the bona on drinking. So yes, it's very important that we encourage them to go for the water instead of these ones. And I'm not too sure that the little water the pregnant woman can take should be more, should be extremely high, that it's going to lead to dilutional anemia. I'm not too sure. I may want to check myself, but I don't think it will get there. Thank you.
Welcome. There's another question from R.D. Lecha. It says, thanks, doctor. Kindly share a little bit on the nutritional management of issues like pregnancy-induced diabetes, hypertension, and the others, etc.
Thank you very much. So my view about pregnancy-induced anemia, hypertension, and all that, and the nutritional management, I think it's all got to do with obesity. And of course, sometimes it's also something we don't control much because of the hormonal influx. My view is that it has to be managed. And one of the ways of managing for me is to, if there is any proper way, or if there's any way, any proper recommendations, we encourage these women to go into a little bit of physical activity, the recommended ones. Because my view sometimes is that when we are doing so much of the dietary interventions at the expense of the physical activity, then it's like you are virtually throwing water into the basket. So yes, these are dietitians I'm talking to. the nutritional requirements may not be too much difficult or far-fetched. But one of the things I want us to avert our mind to also is the physical activity, the recommended ones. Let's encourage them to. And then, of course, I think my other biggest challenge is also got to do with the time of eating. It's also got to do with the time of eating. Some of our mothers, especially the pregnant women, they crave for crazy things at crazy hours. And so as late as 10 p.m., there's a craving for food. And of course, you are not that physically active. So if you are craving for food, you are taking food at 10 p.m., virtually digestion will end 3 hours, 4 hours, and all the carbohydrates has no use. So we convert them to fat, and then you are going to stop. So I would rather play more emphasis on that. I'll play more emphasis on that. Eating at the right time. They are not, most of them cannot eat that extremely high to just like overeating. Of course, there are a few of them, but I don't think the problem is with overeating. My view, problem is the time of the eating and also the fact that they are virtually sedentary too much. So we can look at that as a way of managing it. Thank you.
Thank you too. Dr. Kasim Abdullahi, please, are you still around? Your hand has been raised for some time. You can ask your question or share your contribution.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, very well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Doc, for this great presentation. I think I have two questions. The first one is, I want to know the folic acid supplementation, the recommendation. Is it for all countries in the world? Or there are some countries that are doing well and they don't necessarily need the folic acid supplementation? So that is question number one. And then two, regarding the influence of our cultural beliefs on our dietary behavior, especially the ones that affect our nutritional, our nutritional status. What can we do as professionals to help? Because once it has to do with culture, I'm thinking there is little we can do because it has to do with beliefs. So, and what we advise them might not be that strong to really counter what they have believed all this while. And probably that's the reason why till date we still have that happening. So what do you think we really can do to help with that situation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. So for the folic acid, I want to tackle the folic acid first. It's yes, worldwide. You see, the current recommendation or where we have reached, I always say that we travel from somewhere and this is where we are. At a point in time, neural tube defects were high. And so FAO, WHO together recommended fortification. So we're doing a lot of fortification. Of course, we realized that some countries did not sign up. If you read the history, some countries did not sign up to the fortification. Others did sign up. Of course, your Ghana will sign up quickly, but as to whether we are even going to implement it well is another case altogether. And so what we realized and what was realized at that time was that one best way to get this supplementation or to get this folic acid requirements met was the supplementation. And I must be honest with you that not every country, of course, will sign up to the supplementation accord, but a number of them have signed up. You can check as the statistics are there. What I wanted to put across is that the current folic acid we have on the shelf, I've always maintained, is very cheap. And it's very cheap because it's highly subsidized. In fact, generally, it should be free. The only reason why it costs a little is, of course, the logistical constraint, the transportation, and of course, you can't put it there free on the shelf. I even think when it is put there free on the shelf, nobody would want to respect that. And so, yes, it's so small amount to pay for to get the folic acid. So yes, I want to answer your question directly. It's a worldwide thing, and some countries have done well. Of course, if you look at anemia, the levels of anemia among pregnancy we are doing is not anywhere closer, and even the NTDs we have, the neural tube defects we have, is not anywhere closer to some other countries. So what it means that others are doing a very good job at done. Others are doing good job at done. For the cultural beliefs, I wanted to handle that briefly. My little experience on the field and what I've observed is that the food taboos or the cultural belief that is letting them eat something and eating something. I believe there are gatekeepers in the community. This is what I've learned and I've observed. The gatekeepers are the ones who transform this message from one person to another, one generation to another. And so people will come and people will go. That message still stays in the community. One thing I can recommend based on my research and what we have done is to try and engage these gatekeepers. And so in some communities, we have done this work. We've engaged the chiefs, we've engaged the old women, the grandmothers, and then done a little bit more education with them.
Watch this one for me.
Once these people accept and they get to know that this message they are transferring to the next generation is not healthier, it's not useful, you'd realize that you cut the source of the information or the source of the misinformation or the source of the cultural whatever. In fact, there's one community we went in, we used the Queen Mother as our go-to person. And the Queen Mother, of course, she's cool, so she understands. But in the first place, she was even surprised to hear that there's still food taboo in the community. When we showed her the data and discussed with her and all that, she came to believe that then they are sitting on a time bomb. So this Queen Mother herself led us into the education. And I could feel that that made a lot of impact. So my view is that, yes, it's very important to communicate and educate the people themselves, but let's also target the gatekeepers. These gatekeepers are very important. Have I answered your questions well, please?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
There are some few questions here. Doctor, let's go through. The first one says, Doc, can pregnant women take coconut water in place of water if she is not getting hydrated?
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
from Josie.
In most of the recommendations or most of the work I've done, when we are trying to dissuade them from the sugar-sweetened beverage, usually some of them says, water is too flat and blank for me, I can't drink water. So we recommend the coconut water to be drunk. And I think coconut water should be fair representation than the sugar-sweetened beverage with a lot of sugar in there. Thank you.
Thank you too. This is from whether Jonah or Joanna. It says, Doctor, please, what advice will you give to pregnant women who have dietary restrictions or medical conditions that may impact their food choices during pregnancy?
Thank you very much. It's quite a broader thing. But what I know as dietitians, as nutritionists, what I know is that when there are restrictions, we always look for alternatives. And so if you are looking, for instance, for calcium, I've always maintained, you get your calcium from bones. If for some reason there's restriction on meat intake or bone intake, we would want to look at calcium from milk. If there is restriction or medical restriction, because you're taking certain medicine, you don't have to take, let's say, dairy food or milk. We can look at it from other sources. So yes, there are some restrictions and all that, but sometimes we can also go in for other alternatives. And I think this is the work of dietitians, us, because thankfully we are blessed. The nutrients are not in one food, they are in several foods. So we do a bit of a replacement or a bit of alternatives, and I think we should be fine with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Manuel says he has a contribution, a very insightful presentation from Dr. Apri. Mine is a contribution. With regards to the food safety, we should label it a red flag, especially when there is diarrhea and vomiting. It causes huge nutritional losses, and therefore efforts must be made to resolve the condition and replace them.
Thank you very much.
Let me add this question, then you speak to both issues. From Auntie Ruby Atta, she says, great presentation. Please, Doc, in your research, do you still come across issues of pica? And the second one is, does the intake of caffeinated drinks during pregnancy have benefits in any way? Or what are some of the side effects? So
thank you.
So do this for us.
Thank you. So pica is not far from us. Like I indicated to you, I've still come across several pica behavior in not too recent past, some research we've done. Pica, those are people are not, I also feel sometimes it's our way of questioning them. I feel sometimes we are a bit, I don't want to use the word, but we're a bit judgmental. So our pregnant women curl in their shell and they don't want to talk to us. let's open up and let's help them to open up, and we will see what's going on. The picker is still there. I'm very sure about that. And then the caffeinated drinks during pregnancy have any benefits in any way, and what are the side effects? Of course, what I know about caffeinated drink in pregnancy is a no. So I don't know about whether there are any benefits about that, but I know it's a no. Alcohol and caffeinated drinks are no. That's what I know. Of course, if there's any other more that it can be done, it can do to pregnancy, you may want me to know. But what I know is that it's a no. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think you just spoke about this one. Let me add to it. It's a very insightful presentation. Dr. Warden, please, your view on food taboos during pregnancy.
Well, so maybe I want to say that again. Food taboos during pregnancy is still there. From what I've known, it's still being carried on from one generation to another. I'm a bit restricted to mention some of but we've done a very insightful focus group discussion on these food taboos in some of the communities in the Ashanti region, and it's not a surprise to us that it's being carried on from one generation to another. You see, in fact, we just recently published a paper, I think in is it Ghana Science Journal? I need to check. Just about a month or two ago, we had a publication on food taboos during pregnancy. You can check it out, and it's still high. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. This from Ifwa Ostuansa. She's asking, are there some foods that can lead to miscarriage? I know pineapple has been mentioned by some pregnant women who experienced miscarriage after eating it. Doctor, what's your take on this?
I don't know about that. I've not seen any research that has confirmed that. But of course, the knowledge is there for us to look for. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's there, I don't know, but I've not come across any. But I keep emphasizing, some of these, the women seem to know more than we do know. You talk to them and say, oh, this guy, and I've heard the stories too. This one took pineapple and the 3-4 days later, there was a miscarriage. I don't know about it though, but I doubt pineapple would lead to miscarriage. Maybe I need to also read a little bit more to update myself on that, but I doubt about it. But I suspect that these are all part of the taboos and the misinformation that goes around, especially when it comes to nutrition. Thank you.
Thank you. From Frederica, she's saying insightful presentation, which is very true. Please, Doc, do you come across stress, negative emotional stress, and its impact on the nutrition of pregnant women?
Yes, I do. I do. One of the things I always, but when it comes to pregnant women, the biggest stressor is their husband. The biggest stressor is their husband. And so you talk to them and but sometimes when you are doing this interview, you're asking them, where does your husband work? What does he do? Blah, blah. And the question now shifts to the husband. Then they tend to be disinterested in where the questioning is going. They tend to be disinterested in where the questioning is going. So I think it's true. Maybe we may want to avert our mind and do a little bit more research on this stress and then how it affects pregnancy. But yes, you are right. Sometimes I meet people like that. Some women who cannot contain you because you've even mentioned that you want to hear something about their husband, and that alone put them off. And I'm not interested in even responding to your questionnaire again. So that's what I have, my take on that.
Okay, thank you. From says Dr. Apri, please, dealing with pregnancy and nutrition has been very challenging at my facility. It seems they are not compliant. They keep saying they don't have money, even though I try to play around their meals. I think there's a concerned nutritionist or dietitian who is for a doctor. What should she do?
Thank you very much. In fact, in my experience as a researcher, the most difficult people I've worked with, and that's without any malice, is pregnant women. There are days, and I've had proper insult from some of them. But of course, we understand the hormonal fluctuations and all that, and the sense it makes for them to vent their anger and spleen on you. So I understand, and I want to also admit that it is very difficult. Sometimes you almost virtually throw your hands in despair because the things you are talking to them about, they don't seem to have it. My little recommendation is that as nutritionists, as dietitians, let's not be interested in changing their diets. Let's be interested in hearing what they have and then use that to help them. sometimes I feel that we go with our own literature and we don't seem to be listening to them and then asking where they have, what they have and where they're going to get what you are telling them to get. So my little recommendation is that let's engage them a little more, know what is available and what do they have and what they have, sorry. And then based on that, decide on what we can do to help them based on what is available. There are some of them, when you engage them and they are ready to open up, they will tell you what they have. When I say, because after all, they don't have money, but they are eating eventually. So what are they eating? And how can we change some of the things they are eating to make it a bit more healthier? The worst case, if they don't have the money, then there's little we can do. I've been tempted, and not tempted, I've done that. There's somebody I met, encouraged and interacted with a person for a lot of time. And then eventually I have to dip into my pocket and give her money because it's like, if you don't give me money, everything you're saying is over the bar. So I understand you and I understand the frustration. Thank you.
There's a hand raised. We'll listen to the person. Sophie, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Apre, for this wonderful presentation. I just wanted to add a bit of contribution. So sometimes as we try and solve the issue of anemia, we tend to focus only on the diet or the food that the pregnant woman is eating, forgetting sometimes that they are also on the supplements like the iron, the folic acid, and calcium. So what personally I've seen sometimes is that when the supplements are recommended, they are just told, okay, take maybe the iron twice a day or the calcium once a day. But no one, many times, no one seems to take the pains to tell them that, you know, iron and calcium will interact, so they should be spaced apart. So you find women who are continually eating rich sources of iron, but then they are taking the iron supplements at the same time as the calcium. And because of the inhibition, you don't see the improvement you need exactly in their HB level. So just to also draw
That's
attention.
a very good observation, and thank you so much. That's a very good one. Very, very good one. Thank you. Am I on? Any more questions?
Okay, look, there are a few comments. Let me read them, then I think you can give us your final remarks. The caffeinated drink I was interested in, actually, it's also yellow in color. That's from Auntie Ruby. Then from same Auntie Ruby, she's saying pineapple. I have had an old-time lady friend confirm that the use of it to get rid of every early pregnancy she didn't want to, not need, was because of financial issues. So somebody is also confirming that there are people who take pineapple during the early stages of pregnancy and it can lead to miscarriage.
I may want to revise my notes here. I'm not sure, honestly. I want to read about it. It's not something. Is it a bromelain? I don't know. I'll check, please. Thank you.
All right. Please, are there final questions or comments from the audience?
Okay, so my final thing is, of course, we are still not achieving what we want to achieve. And of course, the moment we don't get what we want, it means that there is a need to do more. So I will encourage our nutrition officers here, our dietitians here, that there is still more to be done. Let's not get tired, especially for me, when it comes to pregnancy, there are already issues. And like I've told you, the worst insult I've had on the field was for a pregnant woman. So let's not have issues with them. Let's spend a little bit more time with them. My other observation, probably the last one, then I'll let go. We went to a community. We realized there were a lot of adolescent pregnant women, but they were not coming for this kind of prenatal attention. We engaged the facility in charge, and after the engagement, I realized that, in fact, we engaged some of the adolescents, and you realize that they don't like coming to the hospital because when they come and meet their mothers, they insult them. And so after all that little work we did, the recommendation we gave them was to have separate days for the adolescents or the younger ones, and then separate days for the old ones. And I must say, it is yielding a lot of results. I've recently checked the GAND and they are still doing that, and it's yielding a lot of positive results. And so I would please plead with you that sometimes maybe pay attention to that. Don't mix the adolescents with the adults, in quotes. You know what I'm referring to, because it's pregnancy also has its own cultural stuff, and the adolescent tells us that the adults kept insulting them, that and I'm more they are always insulting, so they won't come. The moment it became an adolescent clinic, of course, somebody will also want to say that, well, you are encouraging the pregnancy then, but they are pregnant. We can't do much about it. We need to rather help them. So it's one of my experience on the field, and I would recommend that we also pay attention to that aspect of our. Sometimes you put all of them together in education, you will not achieve your objective. Do a little bit of one-on-one counseling and you can achieve your objective. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm most grateful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Apre. We've learned a lot, very practical, and giving us a lot of field work. I'm at Tafo Hospital, and I think probably your recommendation also worked at my place, where currently we have separate days for adolescents, antenatal care, and also for the older ones. We are very grateful. God bless you. Increase your knowledge, and we are learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you too. Thank you too. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Welcome. We'll leave the floor for our coordinator, Mrs. Ifwa also answer, to add a final comment, then we can end today's webinar.
Thank you so much, RD, Danny. Doug, God bless you, and the zone is very grateful.
Amen.
I know you're
Amen.
a very
Bless you.
busy man, but as soon as I called on you, you just accepted readily. We are so grateful.
Thank you.
And you make the work very easy for us. God richly bless you. And thank you for everyone who was able to attend. We have 2 more, so we will announce accordingly so that we can all learn and update our knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you too. Thank you.
All right. So we'll say our final prayer, then we can end today's webinar. Father, we thank you so much for such an insightful webinar. Thank you for increasing our knowledge through your own person, Dr. Apre. That God, you increase his knowledge, give him greater opportunities and platforms to speak and help nations and the world. Pray that God, this knowledge we have also acquired, we also use it to help our clients, interns, students, and all people we come across with. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So,
amen.
Thank you very much. I will meet at our next webinar.
Amen.